Welcome to another Photoshop instalment. Today we're going to do airbrushing. Airbrushing is the Photoshop technique of sort of smoothing models' faces to make people look a bit more brighter and younger. Essentially, you'll get sort of magazines, sort of people editing on magazines who will sort of celebrity magazines, which will do this a lot. Have banks of people, kind of sort of just making people look a bit more fresher and more youthful. So so this technique, I'm going to take off the airbrushing layer so you can see the before and after. So here's the after. Here's the airbrushing effect. And this is what it looked like before. Okay, so before, after, and you can see instantly this is what we're doing. We're sort of creating sort of, I suppose, a kind of impeccable kind of makeup sort of application, really, aren't we? So we're somebody using a big foundation brush with sort of very soft makeup and applying it to the face. Right, without further ado, let's get started. So I'm going to go to my flattened image here, my original image, and I'm just going to do it on the female's model's face today. First thing you're going to do is use the spot healing brush, which is here in the toolbox. The spot healing brush is the tool we're going to use before the brush tool, which we're going to do the airbrushing. The spot healing brush is going to take away sort of spots or wrinkles or very small areas that are going to be quite hard to airbrush out. So this nose stud, for instance, I'm going to zoom into that. So if you don't know how to zoom in and zoom out, it's Control plus or Control minus on a PC. If you're on a Mac, it's Command plus or Command minus. With the spot healing brush selected, and to get a big brush and a small brush, you could use the properties bar up here, but I'm going to be using top left here. I'm going to be using my keyboard shortcuts, which is square bracket left and square bracket right. So I'm going to use square bracket left just to get a smaller brush, and I'm just literally, just before I click down, I'm going to create a new duplicate layer by dragging the background layer to the new layer icon. The reason I'm going to do this before I use my spot healing brush is because I've got the background safe. So if I make a mistake here, I can always delete the background layer that I'm on, which is the background copy layer, and start again. So on the background copy layer, I'm just going to click down a couple of times, and hey presto, we've got rid of that nose stud. I'm going to hold down the space bar. This turns into the hand tool momentarily, and I'm going to zoom around and take out other areas that I think the spot healing tool should eradicate. So here's a wrinkle. Gonna click down and drag, and there we go, that's got rid of the wrinkle. There's one below the eye here, same thing again. Click, drag and drop, and there we go. I'm going to zoom out, Control minus. I'm going to zoom into the forehead, same thing again. I'm going to just skim along that wrinkle there and take it out. Just be aware that you shouldn't do huge kind of lines, I would say. I just do sections of lines sometimes to take areas out. There we go. That will do. So that's the spot healing brush tool. I'm going to double click on the background copy layer to rename it as the spot healing brush, so I know that I've just done it on that layer. Press enter when you're done. Okay, to do the airbrushing now, we're going to select a new blank layer. So bottom of the layers palette, it's this icon here next to the bin. Click that once. I'm going to rename that layer by calling it airbrushing. And what I'm going to do here is go to my brush tool, halfway down the toolbox. I'm going to go up to the brush's properties bar at the top of the page, and I'm going to make sure my opacity is set to 20%. You can press 2 on your keyboard. that will bring it down to 20%. Make sure your flow is 100%, and make sure your smoothing is 100% as well. Okay, start off with a big brush in the middle of the forehead. So square bracket right, I've got a big brush now, and it's almost as big as her forehead. Now, this is the clever bit. I'm going to hold down Alt, and I'm going to click in the middle of the forehead. Now, what that does is that samples the colour of the forehead. And then what I'm going to do is just click down once, exactly where I sampled with Alt click. So, click down, and you'll see a very mild change to the forehead. It's almost indistinguishable. I'm going to move along. I'm going to Alt click again to sample the colour where I'm clicking on her forehead. So Alt click once, hand off mouse, hand off Alt, and then now I click down on her forehead in exactly the same place, and that will just give me another sort of smooth sort of brushing, sort of airbrushing on top of where I've clicked. And the trick is to start off with the large areas. So I'm going to go to her cheek now. I'm going to Alt click to sample the tone of that skin. And then I'm going to click down on my mouse, and I'm going to spray that paint over her cheek. As you see, there's hardly anything happening here, but you just have to believe me that it is very faintly happening on top of the image. I'm going to make my brush smaller, and I'm just going to keep going round the face. Alt click once, and then paint. And you just got to keep going round and round and round. Don't worry about spraying paint into the black areas. We're going to clean up that later. So Alt click there once and paint. Okay, so go over to the other side. Alt click once and paint. Okay, and I'm going to go for smaller brushes, same thing again, Alt click here, and paint. Okay, and if I take this layer on and off, you'll just see the very, very mild painting that I've been doing. Okay, and that is the beginning of the airbrushing technique. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to swap to my sort of finished airbrush image. Which is this one, and I'm just going to remove the mask here, delete it. Okay, now you won't have that there, so now that is where you should be up to when you've gone round all the face and you've used small brushes and big brushes and basically painted all around the face on 20%. Now, as you can see, we've got overlay spray here and all around the chin, and also in the eyes, nose and mouth. What we're going to do here is we're going to create a mask, and we're going to take away the overspray. So without further ado, click on the circle in the square button, which is at the bottom of your layers palette, and you're going to apply that white mask to the airbrushing layer. Now, for those who don't know or can't remember, masks hide or reveal whatever is to the left of that, okay, on the layer. So masks take away or reveal elements of that layer. When the mask is white, it shows everything on that layer. When you paint black on them, which I'm going to do now, it will hide those elements. So with the brush tool selected, make sure you've got a black brush, so press X and then D, and that will default it to a black brush. And now I'm going to start off with 100%, so bring the opacity up to 100%, and I'm going to get rid of the spray pixels on the black column here. See, those are removed, and I'm going to also skim it around here, around the jawline, and the hair. Okay? Now, you can see here on the mask that that is where I've been painting. So where the black is visible on the mask, you've now hid those overspray, that overspray effect on that layer to the left. I'm going to reduce my opacity to roughly about 30%-ish, and I'm going to now do the same over the eyes, nose and mouth. You've got to be careful here that you don't take away the airbrushing effect. So I'm making my brush a little bit smaller. Just going to do it on the end of the nose, just a couple of clicks, and also on the lips as well, and the definition of that come through there. And yeah, that is really it. Don't forget the eyebrows. Again, you could reduce the... I'm clicking away here with a reduced black brush just to bring those features back. And that is it. So that is airbrushing. Okay. Lastly, if you think the airbrushed effect is too much, you can always reduce the layer's opacity by clicking on the layer and then reducing it here. Okay. I'm going to use 100% is a bit too much, so I'm bringing mine down to about 75%. Okay. If you think you haven't done enough, obviously make sure you click back on the mask. That is the taking away the pixels, and then you can paint black again. But just be aware, if you want to repaint on that mask, you've got to select it by clicking on it. Thanks very much. That is the tutorial done for today, airbrushing. Thanks very much.